Faith, freedom, and the American way. That's the topic of today's Bold and Blunt. And I'm your host, Cheryl Chumley, giving you a Christian conservative view of today's news, politics, culture, and events. Is your faith at the forefront of your politics? Well, mine is, and you know this if you're a regular listener, because I say bold and blunt, Christian conservative view, not conservative Christian view, but Christian. Christian first, conservative second. Christian constitutional also works. But if your faith isn't leading your politics, then you're kind of skewed in how you interpret what goes on in the world, in how you interpret what goes on in the United States by way of news of the day. Your faith has to come first, because from your faith, all else flows. Where do you get your moral compass? Where do you get your ideas of how government should run? Where do you get your ideas on how a civil society should conduct itself? That all comes under the umbrella of faith, and really, if we want to be more truthful about it, under the umbrella of biblical teachings. And before I get into all that, I want to quickly mention, if you like Bold and Blunt, you may get Bold and Blunt at edify.app, the online platform for your faith-based podcasts, at washingtontimes.com, where you may also subscribe to my 3 times a week newsletter. Just go to the newsletter section, click on it, find Cheryl Chumley Bold and Blunt, click on that, and sign up for my newsletter. It comes out Monday, Wednesday, Friday, contains my commentaries that I write at the Washington Times, giving you the bullet points and facts you need to fight these far left loons in politics. And it also contains my Tuesday and Thursday, twice weekly Bold and Blunt podcast. But guess what? Washington Times has this new great offering called Higher Ground. It's a newsletter dedicated entirely, 100%, to news and commentaries and opinions and so forth and so on, all related to faith. Who doesn't need a little faith? No, who doesn't need a lot of faith in today's dark, perilous times? So make sure you subscribe to Higher Ground as well. My podcast is in there, but you get other people's podcasts as well and other people's opinions. And, you know, I really like my opinion of my podcast, but even I listen outside my own box of Cheryl Chumley, because guess what? I'm not a Democrat, and I don't like hearing just from the bubble. I don't like hearing just from myself over and over. I like hearing lots of other people's opinions and thoughts and ideas as well. And that's what Higher Ground gives you. It gives you all kinds of opinions related to faith. Check it out. Washington Times is offering that. You can subscribe to that as well. And I have one more quick mention. I want to say that Pastor Jack Hibbs out in California has graciously given me a platform for Bold and Blunt at his Real Life Network as well. So you can always go to Real Life Network, check out all the podcasts there, and make sure you click on mine, listen to it, and I'm going to say it outright, subscribe to it. If you already subscribed, thank you so much. So your faith, does your faith lead in your world, or is it something that you kind of pull out of the box or out of the bed sheets on Sunday morning as you drag yourself off to church, if you do go to church? If you do continue to go to church, because as COVID trained us, well, why do we need to go to church? We can just watch online. But do you just keep your faith reserved for Sundays to pull out in the morning when the alarm clock goes off, and then go to church, and then bring it out and put on the nice clothes and put on the shiny halo and paint the smile on the face, and wear, if you're a woman, you wear Vaseline so your lips smile wider, easier. Did you know that? Did you know that that's a trick? The modeling world actually uses that. The beauty pageant world actually uses that idea. You put a little Vaseline on your teeth, and then your lips just slide right into a natural smile so it doesn't look strained. Well, anyhow, there you go. You learn all kinds of things on Bold and Blunt, don't you? So anyhow, do you put that smile on and that halo on just for church, and then you wear your faith on your sleeve there, but then you come home, and on the way home you're screaming at every other driver on the road because, get off the road, it's your road. My God, man, don't you know this by now? Or do you keep your faith with you the rest of the week as well? Do you have your faith front and center as you are listening to Joe Biden give his next lies on the podium that he barely can stand up straight at? Do you listen to what comes out of Congress with an eye toward biblical truths, with a discerning ear toward truths, and apply what comes out of the mouths of politicians to what the Bible says or to what your church pastor or church preacher says. Do you do that? Well, if you do, you are probably one of the minority, one of the few in America who do. Pew Research wrote in November of 2019 this headline: Americans have positive views about religion's role in society, but want it out of politics. That, even as they said, most religion is losing influence in American life. Well, I can tell you it's losing influence in American life because people with increasing frequency want it left out of politics. How can you divide your life into little boxes like that? How can you say, well, I'm a Christian here, and I will be loud and proud about my Christian beliefs here, but when it comes to there, I'm going to be quiet about it. When it comes to church on Sundays, I will speak up during Bible study and give my views, but when it comes time to applying those biblical teachings and truths and views to Monday morning politics, I'll shut the door on that. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense because what's happening is people are becoming confused about the difference between religion and faith. And yes, religions of the world have all their various differences, and religions of the world have all their various rules and regulations and creeds and dictates and so forth that are put forth by humans as public shows of, hey, look at me, I'm really religious. For instance, some religions teach that you have to go to church Sunday morning, Sunday evening, and Wednesday midweek in the evening. Otherwise, you're not really a true committed Christian. And others teach that you have to give X amount of dollars, X amount of your income to the church, not just to charity, not just to any church, but to that particular church that you go to or that you listen to or that you are thinking of going to as part and parcel of being a fine, upstanding Christian. Those are mankind's dictates, right? Completely different from having a relationship with Jesus. Yes, Jesus taught certain things in the Bible, such as giving money to the church, giving money to charity, and there are certain principles in the Bible that teach 10%. God says, give him his tithes, give him his 10% of all that you bring in your home by way of revenue, by way of money, and he will bless you in return. See if he doesn't open the doors of heaven to shower you with blessings. That's a little bit of a paraphrase, but it does state that. So there's a difference, though, between having a relationship with Jesus and doing those things out of love for Jesus and having really no relationship with Jesus at all and doing those things because your church tells you to do those things and you want to be counted as among a good Christian soldier. And so you do those things publicly, in most cases, so other people can see that you do those things, and then you get credit for being a good Christian soldier. There's a big difference between faith and religion, and a lot can be said negative about religion that is actually worthy criticism, right? Religion in itself, religion by itself, religion that is more secular in nature than spiritual in accordance with a singular relationship with God, has done a lot of damage in the world. But faith in God, faith in Jesus, an individual personal relationship with Jesus, entirely different from religion or attending church, that is something that guides your entire being. That's your moral compass. That's something that tells you how to behave, tells you how to think, leads you down a path of truth and love and just all kinds of virtues that are positive in tone and keeps you away from the path of Satan, keeps you out of trouble. So why would you want to leave that at the door? Why would you want to leave that at the church door and not carry that into your voting decisions, into your ballot boxes, into your places of work on Monday morning? So Pew found this back in 2019, and I can tell you from reading other surveys on similar topics and the same topic, that it's only grown more secular in America, You don't really need me to tell you this. You can look around and see it. Just the growth of the LGBTQ community and how open and bold they are in demanding recognition for their sin and embrace and tolerance of their sin. Just that alone will tell you how far we've come in just a few years. But to say that Americans should leave their faith, their religion, however you want to put it, out of politics, seems to me very contrary to what the Founding Fathers envisioned for America. And I go back to that quote that I talk about frequently on Bold and Blunt, that being that Founding Fathers warned, without a moral, virtuous people, our republic, our limited form of governance, could not last for any solid length of time. And you can see why. You can see as the people grow more and more immoral, as they turn farther and farther away from God, the door is opened, the void is filled by government that grows big, bigger, biggest, until you come to a point where it's all government all the time, God barely at all. And soon enough, as communist nations go, God not at all, and God ultimately becoming government. So this is where it leads if you remove your faith from politics, from culture, from your day-to-day. Americans, Pew wrote, are more likely to say that churches and other houses of worship currently have too much influence in politics. 37% said that, Pew found, rather than too little. 28% said that, Pew found, while the remaining 1/3, or 34%, say religious groups' current level of influence on politics is about right. On balance, Pew goes on to say, U.S. adults have a favorable view about the role religious institutions play in American life more broadly, beyond politics. Well, how come it's okay to have faith and religion in church and in other areas than politics, but it's not okay to have them in politics? Again, that's just living a very haphazard life where you constantly have to reevaluate your steps to make sure you're not going outside these boundaries, these boxes that have been drawn by whom? Who gets to say that, hey, that's too much religion and politics, that's too much faith in the voting booths, we need to back that off? The fact is, America relies on the principle of American exceptionalism to remain different and better than any other nation in the world. The concept of American exceptionalism is God-given individual rights, and you cannot have God-given individual rights if you remove God from that equation. And that includes removing God from all talk, all spheres, all stages of politics. And I have a guest with me today whose entire work being is tied up with tying faith into politics. His name is Timothy Head. He is executive director of the Faith and Freedom Coalition. He's been on the show before. I'm happy to have him back. Tim, thank you so much for coming back on Bold and Blunt. It is great to have you here.
Of course. It's always great to be with you, Cheryl.
So let's talk about Faith and Freedom Coalition's Road to Majority conference that's upcoming. What are some of the issues that you are seeing in your capacity as executive director of this organization as crucial to faith-based voters in 2024?
Well, clearly, the top of mind, I think, for most conservative voters, and frankly, probably all voters in the country right now, is who's going to be the Republican nominee, and so that'll certainly be kind of one of the prevailing themes, I guess, throughout the conference right now. I think we have 10 presidential candidates that have confirmed to be a part of the conference over the course of about 3 days, 2.5 days. But then on subject matters, I would say that there are basically 4 evergreen topics for most faith-based voters in America, those being life, marriage and family, religious liberty, and Israel for a lot of people. So those 4 kind of always are kind of at the top of the ticket. But a couple of others that are certainly hot topics right now are what in the world is going on with our justice system, and then secondly, questions around transgenderism and our school system, and transitioning kids participating in different kinds of sporting events and things of that nature. So I'd say there are definitely some kind of issues du jour that are going to be touched on also at the conference.
Yeah, culturally speaking, this country's a mess right now, and I want to talk about some of the transgender LGBTQ agenda items. But first, the justice system. Are you talking about the George Soros type influences in our justice system, or are you talking about the weaponization of our deep state against certain political figures, namely Donald Trump?
Well, I would say we're talking about both of those insofar as they can be kind of parsed apart. So bear in mind, one of the DAs, the district attorney down in the Atlanta area in Georgia, that is expected to bring probably an indictment later on, late summer, early fall, is also a Soros selected and funded prosecutor. So, the reality is that the broad weaponization is clearly a huge problem. But I would just kind of even put that under as a kind of a subplot, if you will, over just the eroding trust in all systems, frankly. And we can talk about higher education or K through 12 education or our medical institutions, but in this context. We just have a really, I would say, I don't know if it's all-time low as in like 200 years of this country, but certainly in my lifetime, this is the lowest level of trust I think that people have in local or federal law enforcement right now.
And really rightly earned, right? When you look at what's taking place, in these venues, it's horrible. And of course, again, not to harp on Donald Trump, but this is the most visible example we have. And look, Tim, I don't know how you feel about Donald Trump, so I'm just going to go ahead and lay this out and then just, wait for your honest response here. But I always looked at Donald Trump. I'm a fan of Donald Trump's. I voted for him. I would love for him to win in 2024. And the reason why, and I'm a Christian as well, the reason why is because I think he makes the right fight that our country needs, namely for religious freedom and namely against globalization. And I just wonder if you see that Christians, by and large, are turning their backs on Donald Trump because they don't like how he, for instance, talks, or they think that he's too under attack to be a suitable candidate for 2024. What's your viewpoint of him? How should Christians, in your view, respond to Donald Trump at this time?
Sure. Well, listen, this has been a pressing question for the last 5 or 6 years at least.
Yes.
As an organization, we don't endorse in presidential, governor, U.S. Senate, anything else as a matter of policy, but also we worked closely with the Trump White House and Trump administration on a whole host of issues. Certainly including the Supreme Court nominations and eventually confirmations. Which we believe were absolutely historic.
Yep.
And but there were simple executive orders like the Mexico City policy that he put in place literally within 24 hours of taking office. But then there were all kind of grant systems that he worked, that his Health and Human Services administration worked on for the United States and around the world. To minimize abortions with taxpayer dollars. So his record is actually replete with all kinds of positive accomplishments. In certain cases, even historic accomplishments. Talking about moving, the restoration of Golan Heights in Israel to Israeli control. Certainly the move of the American embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. Honestly, the list goes on and on. Certainly can appreciate all kinds of voters that that maybe prefer a different flavor, if you will, from a personality perspective. But his record definitely speaks for itself. But as an organization, we're here, cycle in and cycle out, year after year after year, just championing and trying to lift up those issues of life, marriage, and family, religious liberty in Israel. And we think that the reason why we're having so many candidates come to our conference here in another 2 weeks or so is because we think that as the water level, if you will, rises, that all the other boats in the harbor rise as well. And so we think that it's important for us to kind of lift up these clarion conversations and remind people in the midst of a lot of distracting information right now in America that these important, timeless issues remain important and timeless, and we can't be distracted by kind of extraneous noise.
I find it optimistic that it seems to me, and I go to several of these conferences as well, and my viewpoint is Christian conservatism, so I'm tuned in with organizations such as your excellent Faith and Freedom Coalition that puts faith at the forefront of politics. I take optimism from the idea that politicians are now turning more and more to groups like yours to receive your endorsements or to receive your support, because that shows me they see the importance of faith and God in America.
Well, I think that's right. And listen, also numbers don't lie. So I think in principle, a lot of candidates really do carry these values in their own kind of heart and mind. But now, I mean, I can go back five presidential cycles and about 12 other election cycles now that essentially self-identified faith voters, so these are either evangelical voters, faithful Catholic voters, Orthodox Jewish voters, etc., constitute about 72% of the Republican Party.
Wow.
So the reality is, for anybody that's seeking, there's about 35% of the entire electorate and about 70 to 72% of the Republican electorate. So anybody that wants the nomination and is going to go through Iowa, South Carolina, and Super Tuesday knows that they better speak very fluently and very persuasively to religious voters, or somebody else is going to get the nod.
Then how, first off, that's great, 72%. I didn't know the number on that, but that's very good to hear. Second off, though, so how did the LGBTQ agenda squeak by? If there are so many conservative, faith-based voters out there, how did they get to this point where they're hanging, I just can't even say this without almost spitting, hanging a pride flag from the White House wedged in between two U.S. banners? How did we get here, Tim?
Well, how much time do you got? I think that there's a dissertation to be written on this. It didn't just happen overnight. I mean, this has actually been a systematic drumbeat by some very, frankly, clever people, very well-funded people for, I would say, almost 40 years at least, to kind of to portray that flag, we'll just say, in a very innocuous, very kind of palatable way. And so it's no surprise that the first major television star to publicly identify is a comedian, Ellen DeGeneres, who has her own show, had her own show at a certain point.
Right.
But she didn't even come out as gay until 4 seasons into that very show.
That's
and,
right.
When the ratings were high and her favorables were high.
Yeah.
So this has been a very kind of mapped out strategic PR campaign that's been waged with some, again, a lot of money and some very smart people that have managed to kind of masquerade, in my opinion, a very dangerous argument to the American people.
What did Faith and Freedom think when you guys saw that flag at the White House?
Well, to be honest with you, we're not surprised by things that come out of this White House at this point. As a matter of fact, in many ways, you should almost expect it. But frankly, we also are so entrenched, I would say, right now, embroiled in working in state legislatures across the country. That you certainly take note, but we're actually winning in almost 30 states across the country this year, building this firewall, if you will, for, certainly for protecting innocent life and for, restoring parental rights and school choice, in state legislatures across the country. I think the time is now that we can actually put a lot of wins on the scoreboard, so to speak. And so, while I'm probably as offended as anybody at the symbolism of that coming out of the White House, we just have to kind of, keep keep marching and keep championing these values in all of the venues that we believe that we can make progress in.
That's some good news. Let's wrap on that. Talk about what you guys are doing, as you said, to build a firewall at the state level. That way, no matter who wins the White House or Congress in the coming years, how it trickles down into the states in many instances could be stopped. So what exactly are you guys doing?
Well, so, I think you have to kind of start with the shift at the Supreme Court, which obviously happened a couple of years ago, but the opinions have started to trickle out and are making states' rights stronger and stronger, almost on a monthly basis at this point. So you've got the big Dobbs decision, which of course made global news, but there actually are a number of other kind of lesser-known decisions that are strengthening state legislatures. And so what that means is that we are lobbying again in 28 or 30 states this year, and we'll continue to do this, partnering with governors, Senate majority leaders, House majority leaders in these states to basically completely decouple, state policy from federal policy. And that certainly has kind of social implications, but I think eventually it's going to start to have healthcare implications, higher education implications, even, probably some other more intricate mechanisms here, because I think that we have to make sure that states are kind of the fighting grounds. State capitals are the fighting grounds, because they're, Washington D.C. at this point is to say that it's a road game for Christian conservatives at this point is an understatement.
Can your influences at the state level be effective against the likes of Larry Fink and BlackRock in terms of, the takeover of the financial sector, pensions, and so forth?
Well, I think the short answer is yes. So bear in mind that a ton of these, of the assets that are managed, at least domestic assets, so, we talk about, BlackRock, almost half of their assets are Chinese assets, and so that's not going to be an American conversation at this point. But state retired employee pension funds and state retired teacher pension funds are two of the largest kind of vehicles or instruments that these management funds want access to. Another one would be university endowments, and so which are distinct from state legislatures, but also have a lot of legislatures have influence over university, public endowments. So I think that there are ways that we can kind of pull these levers bit by bit, and we're already seeing right now we have 13 different states that have moved ESG legislation to disallow their retired teacher or retired employee funds from investing in firms that have ESG investment policies in place. So yes, you can't completely end BlackRock, but you can severely cripple them.
Oh, that puts a smile on my face. Thank you, Tim, for that optimistic news. Just one other quick point. So the Road to Majority Policy Conference, that is not this Saturday, next Saturday, the 24th. Or it's next week, right? The week of the 19th.
June 22nd, 23rd, and 24th at the Washington Hilton there and right in downtown Washington. And
is it too late for people to attend, to come to it, to get tickets? How could you attend if you want to?
It's tight at this point, but we still can squeeze a few more people in. So Friday morning, we have 7 presidential candidates on Friday morning, have 2 more on Saturday morning, and then President Trump is highlighting our gala on Saturday night, along with a Lifetime Achievement Award from Mike Huckabee. So, it's going to be, kind of no rest for the weary. People kind of have to take a vacation when they get home from the conference. They can register at ffcoalition.com. And then also we'll be streaming it online for people that are around the country, also on our website, again, at ffcoalition.com.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Tim. It's great to have you as a guest. And, of course, you'll be back. You'll be back soon, yes?
I certainly hope so. And I'm also looking forward to seeing you at the Hilton here in just a few days as well.
Yeah, I'll be speaking there. I'll be part of a panel on a Saturday morning.
That's right. That's right. I will be there backstage to welcome you.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you so much for being on Bold and Blunt. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for everything you do. God bless.
God bless. Faith and Freedom Coalition. You should check out their website. They do great work. And go to the conference if you can, or one of their conferences, since they hold so many throughout the United States during the course of the year. If you like Bold and Blunt, don't forget you may get Bold and Blunt at edify.app, at washingtontimes.com, or, of course, wherever podcasts are offered, including now at Pastor Jack Hibbs' Real Life Network. Thank you for listening once again. Tune in next time, and in the meanwhile, stay blunt, stay bold.